Most people moving to DC waste thousands and lose hours every week just by picking a wrong neighborhood. But I'll break down how DC really works: commutes, lifestyles, budgets, and the neighborhoods that actually fit. Trust me, this is the only video you need to figure out DC. By the end, you'll know exactly where to live and why. Let's get into it. Alright, let's start with the core of everything. Washington, DC. The whole city takes up about 68 square miles. And here's something most people don't know. It was planned out way back in 1700s. And that old design still affects how we get around today. A guy named Pierre Charles Lafont came up with the layout in 1791. He used a grid of regular streets, then added big diagonal avenues that cut across the grid. Kind of genius, right? At the very center is the Capitol building, and that's where the city is divided into 4 parts: northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest. That actually matters. When someone says an address like 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, that northwest tells you in the northwest part of the city. And get this, there's actually a neighborhood that has a 0 metro access but costs more than almost anywhere else. I'll get into that in a few minutes. Now, each part of DC has its own style. Take Capitol Hill. It's full of those classic row houses and a strong neighborhood vibe. The streets are lined with trees, and you can walk right to the Capitol. There's also this cool area called Easton Market that's packed on weekends with farmers markets and small shops. If you head northwest, you'll get into DuPont Circle. It's one of the city's main cultural spots. The place is full of embassies, art galleries, restaurants, and a fun nightlife scene. The big circle with the fountain in the middle, that's like the neighborhood's hangout spot. And because it's so popular, it's one of the most expensive places to live in DC. Now, Georgetown is even older than DC itself. It was founded in 1751. It's got cobblestone streets, old brick buildings, and M Street, where you can find all kinds of shopping and food spots. There's no metro stop here, which makes it feel kind of set apart, but it also means you've got to plan how you get there. Now, Logan Circle is like a DC glow-up story. Around 20 years ago, it wasn't doing so great. Now, it's one of the top spots for young professionals. Old buildings got fixed up, new restaurants opened, and now it's one of the best places to eat and go out in the city. And here's something cool about DC's layout. The further you go from the city, the more it feels like the neighborhood. Places like Shaw and Columbia Heights have changed a lot over the years. But now, let's cross the Potomac River and enter Virginia, which feels completely different from DC proper. First, if we haven't met yet, I'm Ryan Butler, your go-to realtor here in the DC area. I help people buy, sell, and figure out where the heck to live in this crazy market. If you're into real talk about DC neighborhoods, what's actually happening in the market, and what it's like to live here day to day, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. So, this is where you get the best of both worlds. The space of the suburbs and the convenience of the city. It's actually kind of amazing how well it works. Let's start with Arlington. It's just across the river from DC and might be the easiest suburban place to live if you still want to get into the city fast. There's Pentagon City with a huge mall and tons of hotels. Crystal City with underground walkways that connect a bunch of buildings, and Roslyn, which looks like a mini downtown with tall buildings. And speaking of Crystal City, there's a massive tech company that just changed everything about this area. Soon, you'll see why this one decision is making some neighborhoods explode in value. But the best part here, the metro. The orange and blue line go right through Arlington. So you can live in a more chill spot and be downtown in about 15 to 20 minutes. Then there's Clarendon, Boston, and Courthouse, neighborhoods along the metro line that feel like mini cities of their own. They've got restaurants, bars, shops, all packed into walkable areas. Arlington County planned it that way, building a lot around metro stops so you don't need a car for everything. It's got a great mix of quiet and busy. Now, Alexandria has a different vibe. Old Town Alexandria looks like it's from a history book. Brick sidewalks, super old buildings, and a riverfront view of the Potomac. King Street is the main street, full of restaurants, stores, and historic spots. There's even this place called the Torpedo Factory Art Center, where artists work inside what used to be a weapons factory. That's pretty wild, right? But Alexandria is not just the old town. There are other neighborhoods too, like Bel Ray. People call it the Avenue because of Mount Vernon Avenue. It's got cool restaurants and shops, and it feels like a small town even though it's close to DC. They do community events and support local businesses, so it's got that cozy, neighborly feel. Then you got Fairfax County. This is where a lot of the families want to be. The schools here are some of the best in the whole country. There are neighborhoods like Reston, which was planned out in the 1960s. It's full of walking trails, lakes, and little town centers with shops and restaurants. It's a cool mix of nature and modern living. But Tyson's Corner also needs a shout out. It used to be just a giant mall with parking lots all around, but now it's turning into its own urban area. Thanks to the Silver Line Metro extension, which I'll talk about more soon, people can now take the train right there. That brought a ton of new buildings and made it feel like its own downtown. And if you go further west in Northern Virginia, like out to Leesburg or Manassas, you'll find bigger houses and more yard space. But the trade-off is the longer commute. Whether you're driving or taking a train, it'll take more time to get into DC. But for some people, that extra space is totally worth it. Now, Maryland's portion of the metro area has its own distinct character, and it starts right at the DC border. Let's check it out. This is where you'll find some of the area's most well-known suburbs, and they come with a lot of great stuff. Let's start with Bethesda. It's grown into this fancy suburban city with its own skyline full of tall buildings. The downtown area near the metro station has high-end stores, awesome restaurants, and even the huge National Institute of Health campus. But what makes Bethesda stand out is how it mixes quiet, tree-lined neighborhoods with big city perks. You can live in a nice house on a peaceful street and still walk to amazing food and shopping. Silver Spring has a totally different vibe. The downtown was rebuilt around the metro, turning it into a cool, walkable spot with restaurants, the American Film Institute movie theater, and even the Discovery Channel's headquarters. It doesn't feel like your typical suburb, and that really matters when we start talking about the different lifestyles later. Then there's Rockville. It's where the Montgomery County government is based, but it's also become a lot more than that. The town center has this great main street setup with shops, restaurants, and homes all close together. And it's right by I-270, which is a big deal for people who need to drive to work, especially in the biotech industry. Speaking of biotech, there's a whole stretch called the Biotech corridor that runs along I-270. It starts in Bethesda and goes through Rockville and up into Gaithersburg. Big companies like Marriott and Lockheed Martin are here, along with tons of science and tech jobs. All those high-paying jobs really shake the area, from the kind of houses you see to how much they cost. Gaithersburg and Germantown are further out and give you more space. The homes are usually newer, and the neighborhoods are super family-friendly. There's a fun spot in Gaithersburg called the Washington Center that has shops, restaurants, and stuff to do, but it still feels very suburban. One more thing, Montgomery County schools are some of the best in the country. That's a huge reason why so many families moved here. The county spends a lot on education, and you can really tell. It also affects home prices because people want to live in areas with strong schools. But let's talk about how you move between all of these areas, because transportation shapes everything about living in the DC metro area. Here's the deal. If you want to pick the right place to live around, you have to understand how the metro works. The metro system has 6 colored lines: red, blue, orange, silver, green, and yellow. Each line goes to different parts of the DC area, and knowing which one runs near your future home can totally change your daily life. The red line goes north to south and connects downtown DC with the Maryland suburbs. If you live in places like Bethesda, Silver Spring, or Rockville, you'll probably use this line all the time. From Bethesda to downtown, it's about a 25-minute ride. From Rockville, add another 10 minutes. But here's what's wild. There's one famous highway that circles the entire area, and whether you live inside or outside of it, completely changes how much you'll pay for housing. I'll get to that in a few minutes. Alright, so the orange and blue lines go into Northern Virginia. They run through Arlington and out into Fairfax County. The orange line ends in Vienna, and the blue line heads out to Franconia Springfield. These two make it super easier to live in Virginia and still work or go to school in DC. Now, here's where it gets cool. The silver line, which opened in steps, totally changed how people in Northern Virginia get around. It links places like Tyson's Corner and even Dulles Airport to the rest of the metro system. Before the Silver Line, people had to drive or take a bunch of buses. Now, it's one train ride. That's a huge deal. But the metro isn't perfect. It stops running around midnight during the week and a bit later on weekends. During rush hour, the trains can get super crowded, especially ones coming into DC from Virginia or Maryland. On weekends, they do a lot of maintenance work, which can slow everything down. There's also a bus system called Metrobus that helps cover areas the trains don't reach, but buses aren't as fast or reliable, so a lot of people just drive for those trips instead. DC traffic is a beast. In the morning, everyone's driving into the city. In the evening, it's the opposite. Everyone's trying to get back out. There's this giant highway that circles the area called the Capitol Beltway, or 495, and it's famous for traffic jams. Other big roads like 66 or I-270 and the American Legion Bridge also get super backed up. So here's the key thing. Where you live totally affects how you get around. If you're near a metro stop, you can use public transportation every day. But if you're further out, you'll probably be driving. And depending on traffic, that drive could take anywhere from 30 minutes to over an hour. Now, different parts of the DC Metro attract different kinds of people. And once you get how those patterns work, it gets way easier to figure out where you actually feel at home. Let me break down the vibe and lifestyle in each area so you can see what you might be the right fit for. Here's the thing. A lot of people choose where to live based on their job and lifestyle. And in DC, that leads to some clear patterns. Young professionals, especially those working in government, consulting, or tech, often live in places like Dupont Circle, Logan Circle, and Capitol Hill. These neighborhoods are easy to walk around, have fun nightlife, and offer quick commutes. You won't get a huge apartment, but you're close to everything and always near something going on. Lots of people in their 20s also move to Arlington, especially to neighborhoods like Clarendon and Boston. You get a little more space, but you're still near the metro and can get into DC easily. The bars and restaurants here are super popular with young professionals too. They're made with that crowd in mind. Families with kids look into different things. In Maryland, Montgomery County is a favorite because the schools are some of the best around. Bethesda, Rockville, and Potomac are all known for great schools, parks, and strong communities. These areas are pricey, but you get amazing education and family support. In Northern Virginia, Fairfax County is the go-to for many families. It has great schools and neighborhoods made for families. Places like Reston, Herndon, and Miana give you a classic suburban lifestyle, but with access to the metro, so you're still connected to the city. And here's something cool. More and more empty nesters and retirees are moving downtown. Neighborhoods like Penn Quarter and Southwest Waterfront are great for people who want to leave the suburbs, live in smaller homes, and still enjoy dining, arts, and city life. Now, what you pay to live in these places depends a lot on the lifestyle you want. I'll explain the prices in a bit when we talk more about how neighborhoods vibe connects to costs. There's also a big international community in DC. People working at embassies or international groups often live in Dupont Circle or Cleveland Park. These neighborhoods are close to Embassy Row and have a global feel to them. And let's not forget tech workers. Since the tech industry has grown in the area, especially after Amazon announced its second headquarters, Crystal City has become a major tech hotspot. Plus, tech professionals also like Arlington and some metro-connected DC neighborhoods where they can have both city perks and a little extra space. But understanding DC's layout becomes much easier when you know the key landmarks that serve as reference points. Let's check these out. Understanding how DC is laid out gets way easier once you know the main landmarks people use to find their way around. Once you learn these, it starts to feel pretty natural to get around the whole area. The Washington Monument is right in the center of the National Mall, and it helps you figure out what's north and south. At the far end of the mall is the Capitol Building, and that's where the city's sports sections, called quadrants, starts. These two spots help you understand where everything else is. The Potomac River forms DC edge on the west and south. If you crossed it going west, you're in Virginia. Go north and cross into Maryland, and you'll notice the street numbers and layout change. That's how you know you've left the city. There are also big traffic circles around DC that help people find their way. Places like Dupont Circle, Logan Circle, and Washington Circle aren't just for cars. They're also popular neighborhood spots. These circles connect the straight grid streets with diagonal avenues, so they stand out and make good meeting points. In the suburbs, the Capitol Beltway, also called I-495, works like a giant ring around DC. If someone says they live inside the Beltway, they're usually closer to the city and prices are higher. Outside the Beltway means further out, more space, and longer drives. That ring really affects how people choose where to live. And a few major highways also help you figure out directions. I-66 goes east and west through Northern Virginia. I-270 heads northwest into Maryland. And the American Legion Bridge connects Maryland and Virginia up north across the Potomac. Metro stations are a big deal too. They're kind of like neighborhood centers. So when someone says they live near the Bethesda Metro or the Clarendon Metro, you instantly get a rough idea of where they are and how easy it is to get around. That's super helpful when you're looking for a place to live or making plans with friends. Another river, the Anacostia, flows into the Potomac and divides the city even more. Southeast DC is mostly on the east side of the Anacostia, and Southwest DC sits between the two rivers. And finally, shopping and hangout spots help define a lot of neighborhoods. M Street in Georgetown, King Street in Alexandria, Bethesda Road, and Wilson Boulevard in Clarendon are all busy streets filled with stores, restaurants, and entertainment. They're great places to visit and easy landmarks to remember. But here's where understanding the DC metro area gets nuanced. Sometimes the most convenient location isn't necessarily the best fit, and sometimes the perfect neighborhood feel comes with transportation challenges. Let me show you what I mean. Take Georgetown, for example. It's super charming, full of history, and has some of the best places to eat and shop in the whole area. But here's the catch. There's no metro stop. So you're stuck using buses, walking a lot, or driving. Some people are fine with that. Others get really annoyed by it every day. Now, compare that to Crystal City in Arlington. It's the total opposite. It's super connected, there are even underground walkways, and you can easily get to downtown DC, the airport, or other parts of Virginia. But the area feels more like office buildings than a real neighborhood. It's super efficient, but it's missing that warm community feel. Then there's Bethesda, which kind of lands in the middle. It has great metro access, awesome schools, fancy shops and restaurants, but it's pricey. A regular single-family home in downtown Bethesda can cost around $1.5 million or even more. So why are some neighborhoods so expensive while others are more affordable? It mostly comes down to three things: how close they are to the metro, how good the schools are, and whether you can walk to fun stuff like shops and restaurants. If a place checks all three boxes, like Bethesda, DuPont Circle, or the metro areas of Arlington, prices go way up. Neighborhoods that only hit one or two of those points are usually better deals. Capitol Hill, for example, has cool historic homes and you can walk almost everywhere, but the schools aren't rated as high. That makes it better for some people than others. Silver Spring has great metro access, but isn't seen as fancy like Bethesda, so prices are lower. Further out suburbs like Leesburg, Manassas, or Gaithersburg gives you more space for less money. You could double down the house for the same price. But the trade-off is longer commutes, sometimes over an hour each day. And here's something a lot of people don't think about. Living near a metro station doesn't just help with your commute. It also opens up more chances to see friends, explore new restaurants, and get around the whole region without needing a car all the time. Parking also plays a role in where people live. In downtown DC, it's often street parking or paying a lot for a garage. In the suburbs, you usually get your own driveway, but you'll need a car to go most places. The cool thing is, there is a neighborhood in this area for almost every personality. Want that busy city vibe? Check out Logan or DuPont. Prefer a quieter suburban feel? Reston or Potomac might be better. Want something with small town charm? Look at Old Town Alexandria or downtown Rockville. And even neighborhoods that are super close to each other can feel completely different. Arlington's metro neighborhoods feel very city-like, while nearby Fairfax County has more traditional suburbs, even though they're in the same state and near the same metro lines. In the end, it really depends on your routine. If you work in a city and hang out there, living in a metro is a huge win. If you got kids, being a great school district might matter more. And if you work from home, you'll care more about what the neighborhood feels like than how close it is to a train. Now you've got a simple idea of how the DC area works and where to focus. DC gives you a city life and walkability. Northern Virginia mixes suburbs with easy metro access. Maryland offers great schools and family-friendly neighborhoods. The metro connects it all. Not perfectly, but well enough if you know how to use it. Neighborhoods often grow around metro stations, and each has its own vibe. The main thing to remember, choosing where to live isn't just about looks. It's about what fits you, your job, your lifestyle, your family. Once you get how DC is set up, it's actually a great place to live with lots of opportunities. And now that you've got a better feel for how DC really works, it's time to start planning your move. Whether you're looking to buy your first home or upgrade, I'm here to guide you through every step. Shoot me an email at ryan@coalitiontg.com and let's lock in your strategy. Don't wait. Inventory's tight, competition is heating up, and 2025 is your year to make it happen. And before you go, don't miss the next video. I'm breaking down the 3 most underrated cities in the DC Metro. We're talking about solid home values, lower price per square foot, and way more space than you'd expect. Trust me, these spots fly under the radar, but they shouldn't. Go check it out. See you there.